It's a Sunweb holiday.
Hi there, we're Sunweb and we love ski holidays. That feeling of cruising down beautiful slopes. It's a feeling we want to share. We want you to get the most out of your ski holiday. That's why with Sunweb, your lift pass is always included, which saves you serious money. That's money for a round of drinks at the après, treating yourself at the spa, or maybe to just put in your piggy bank. Discover how much you can save at sunweb.co.uk.
Summer's nearly over, it's time to get back to real life. Luckily, Cinch has got all the essentials sorted. And we're not talking about new textbooks. Let's see, the biggest range of cars to buy entirely online? Check. Free 90-day warranty? Sorted. And faff-free Cinch servicing at a Marshall store near you? Absolutely cinched it. Everything you need and not a pencil case in sight. Cinch it for yourself today. Visit cinch.co.uk. Comparison against equivalent retailers. Visit cinch.co.uk/range claim. Terms and exclusions apply.
Are you a lifelong fan of General Hospital?
Are you a new fan who wants to know more about the history of the show?
Do you enjoy talking about the show with others?
Do you find yourself yelling at the TV?
Is your self-care an hour a day in Port Charles?
If so, we invite you to join hosts
Amanda Kimmel
and Shannon Coach at the place where all the hidden conversations take place and secrets are revealed.
Meet us at Pier 54,
a General Hospital fan podcast. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the Port Charles 411 Lucky Part 45. We're leaving Liz out of this, even though she does pop up a couple times, but nothing super substantial. Oh,
I mean, he's still hanging out in Ireland. She's not over in Ireland. She's back home taking care of her baby that we don't even think is his at this point. So
that's the thing. We'll get there because I did the research for this one and the next one at the same time, so I forget where I left off on this one. Mm-hmm. Liz is still involved somewhere. They're exactly right. There is conversations about Aiden and stuff, so obviously that is their relationship, but at this point, it's like co-parenting. She's only going to be every other episode, like every other weekend. So there we go.
Right.
So last week we left off where Lucky was undercover as Ronan O'Reilly, bad guy. Did he work for the Balkan or against the Balkan? I forget.
I think he was trying to figure that out. I kind of think he was like a freelance contractor or something, because he didn't really know what the Balkan expected of him, and he didn't have all the information as far as locations and stuff, because that was creating issues for him because he wasn't Ronan. And so he was trying to figure out, where to go from here. So I don't know that they ever made it clear if he was supposed to be hired by the Balkan or an enemy of the Balkan, but either way, he was trying to get interaction with him to figure out just how bad the Balkan is.
Yep. You'd think that, and you pointed it out, it's pretty insane this guy died yesterday. You look like him. Tomorrow you're going to Ireland to pretend to be him, let alone letting you know which side you're on.
Right. I feel like, you and I are pretty close. Even if no one else would say something, I could not take on your life and run it the way that you do without making mistakes, because I have no idea of certain things. So for them to expect Lucky to do it just because he looks like him is absurd.
Right. So, but we left off where Lucky and Siobhan kissed, and that's where we're picking up again. But she kicked him in the stomach and slapped him across the face right after.
Yes.
She accused him of using the kiss as a way to manipulate her into silence, knowing full well that she could expose his identity as an undercover cop. Because remember, she was in the closet as Lucky, Lulu, and Dante were discussing the fact that he was undercover. And I did watch this clip. So I will say, we're forgetting how good Julie Berman was. And that Lulu, we're forgetting her feistiness, because we're like, that's ridiculous. She's undercover. She doesn't have this. Oh, she carried herself. So okay. I think that we know, obviously, it's a completely different Lulu, but even Julie Berman Lulu was more Luke.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're not giving her enough credit, even though, we're saying, how did Dante just let her do all this stuff? But I don't think I was wrong in saying it's still at the beginning stages of their relationship, so he didn't realize. But she was carrying her own. So it wasn't like this Lulu pretending to be a detective or anything. This one was carrying it. So
Okay.
yeah, we need to remember who the casting was at that time for Lulu.
All right. Thank you for that reminder. Because, yeah, I'm just picturing current Lulu, like whenever she went to see Charlotte, and it was like, no.
Lucky insisted that he wasn't playing games. He told her that his goal was to keep her safe because whether she realized it or not, she was already in danger simply by knowing too much. Siobhan pushed back, warning him that for all he knew, she could be working with the Balkan. Lucky stood firm, saying that he didn't believe it. Their tense back and forth was interrupted when Luke appeared in his disguise as an Irish priest, claiming that he bribed his way out of jail. Siobhan wasn't fooled for a second and stormed off, unimpressed with Lucky's priest companion. When she left, Lucky admitted to Luke just how much effort he had put into earning Siobhan's trust, and now it felt like he was starting back at square one. Luke apologized, saying he only wanted to help, but there wasn't much time to dwell. Lucky's phone rang, and it was the Balkan's men summoning him for a meeting in the alley behind the pub. Siobhan secretly followed and listened as Lucky, posing as Ronan O'Reilly, was ordered to find and kidnap Brenda Barrett. Lucky argued against it, saying Brenda was far too famous to target without drawing unwanted attention. But the Balkan's man, Slavek, didn't give him a choice. Their conversation was interrupted when Siobhan was discovered hiding nearby. Thinking quickly, Lucky pulled a gun and claimed that Siobhan was his partner. Slavek was skeptical, but Lucky sold the idea by pointing out that her skills would be valuable if they were going after Brenda. Slavek grudgingly accepted the excuse and gave Lucky his next lead. Brenda has been spotted in Rome. Afterward, Lucky warned Siobhan that she had no choice but to come with him, since the Balkan's men would kill her if she stayed in Ireland. Though resistant, she reluctantly agreed to follow his lead. Meanwhile, back in Port Charles, Ethan was confronted by two thugs on the Haunted Star. They wanted answers about Luke's supposed connection to Ronan O'Reilly. Ethan had no idea what they were talking about, and they roughed him up before leaving. When Luke later saw the bruises on his son, Ethan explained what happened. Luke realized things were getting even more complicated, and if the Balkan's men were sniffing around Port Charles, then Lucky's cover might already be at risk. In Ireland, Lucky wasn't faring much better. He had taken a beating himself, and Siobhan brought him home to patch him up. She thanked him for protecting her as she tended to his wounds, and the two shared a quiet moment. She kissed him, but Lucky pulled away. He listed every reason he thought they shouldn't get closer. His history with failed relationships, his struggles with addiction, all the baggage that followed him. Siobhan wasn't having it. With a smirk, she told him, I so badly want to do a bad Irish accent with this. I will try it, and if it's bad, I'll take it out. I can't look at you while I do this.
Okay.
Get over yourself. I'm not looking to marry you. I just want to sleep with you. Oh, that was that.
There you go.
I'm not going to do that every time she talks. If we get another quote. With that, the walls came down and they ended up making love. I mean, if that's all that it takes, geez. The next morning in Dublin, Lucky tries to sneak out, but Siobhan woke up and caught him. He admitted that he cared about her, but he didn't want her dragged any deeper into the dangerous web surrounding him. Siobhan reminded him that he was already in danger, whether he liked it or not, and she could be of use. Eventually, Lucky agreed to take her to Rome to continue the search for Brenda Barrett. Once there, Lucky charmed a hotel concierge to gather information, while Siobhan watched jealously from the side. The concierge revealed that Brenda was actually in Port Charles, but before Lucky and Siobhan could make their exit, the Balkan's men confronted them. Things escalated when they demanded Lucky prove his loyalty by killing Siobhan. Lucky didn't flinch. With his gun aimed at her, he coolly explained that killing Siobhan in public was reckless. There were cameras, witnesses, and far too much risk for everyone involved. His hesitation bought Siobhan just enough time to escape. Later, Lucky caught up with her and admitted that he had staged the moment so she could get away. Lucky admitted it was risky, but he had a plan. The best way to protect her was to disappear. If the Balkan believed Ronan had carried out the order and killed her, she would no longer be a target. He convinced her to go with him to Port Charles, insisting that Ireland would be the first place the Balkan's men would search. Though hesitant, she agreed, impressed when Lucky produced a fake passport and visa to make it all possible. Man, that was quick. And this was in 2011 or 2010? Jeez.
I mean, he's Luke's son. You know, they have just a whole pile of them shoved somewhere.
That's true. Oh, and this is from like October 2010 to January 2011. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Back in Port Charles, Luke sought out Jason at the Metro Court. He filled him in on Lucky's dangerous undercover work, admitting that the Balkan had been digging for information on Ronan and was beginning to suspect him. Jason was stunned to learn that Lucky was involved with Interpol and promised to share information if Luke would do the same. Both men agreed that Brenda's life was in danger as long as the Balkan remained in power, and neither of them knew his true identity. Luke warned that the crime lord was ruthless, deeply connected, and already had his eyes on Lucky. Later, Luke confided in Lulu that he was worried about his son, who was caught in the crosshairs of a man powerful enough to destroy anyone who crossed him. All the while, Lucky and Siobhan prepared to take a step into the next phase of their dangerous journey.
Dun, dun, dun. Luke didn't hold back when he told Lulu that the Balkan was a vicious man, someone far too dangerous for either of his children to be wrapped up with. Lulu refused to back down, saying there was no way she could just stand by while Lucky was in the middle of something this risky. Luke reassured her that Lucky had sharp instincts and could think on his feet, but Lulu snapped that she could too. Luke quickly clarified that he wasn't doubting her abilities, joking instead that she was a credit to his loins. He shifted back to Lucky, asking if she'd heard from him. When Lulu admitted she hadn't, Luke grew uneasy and decided that if Lucky didn't check in within the next few days, he'd have to track him down himself. Not long after, Nicholas was surprised when Lucky showed up at Windermere with Siobhan in tow. Lucky explained that he had run into Luke in an Irish jail where their father had landed after getting caught impersonating a priest. He then filled Nicholas in on what had really been happening. Interpol had recruited him to pose as Ronan O'Reilly to help bring down the Balkan. Since the Balkan believed Siobhan was dead, Lucky insisted she stay hidden at the castle for her own safety while he continued the mission. Nicholas agreed to the arrangement, even as Lucky explained the Balkan wouldn't meet face-to-face until Ronan proved himself by kidnapping Brenda. Lucky planned to follow up with a contact for more information, but he made Siobhan promise to stay behind. While Lucky met Jason at the waterfront to update him on the plan, one of the Balkan's men secretly took photos of the two talking. Lucky explained to Jason that he and Interpol wanted to stage a fake kidnapping of Brenda, which would hopefully force the Balkan to surface. Jason agreed, but both men admitted they were baffled by the Balkan's fixation on Brenda and her reluctance to come clean about what she knew. As Jason walked away, the Balkan spy sent off the photos with a chilling message: "Don't trust him." Is that a chilling message? Anyway.
Yeah, I guess.
Back at Windermere, Siobhan and Nicholas had some time alone and began to learn more about each other. She admitted she couldn't picture Lucky growing up in such a grand estate, and Nicholas explained that Lucky's childhood had been very different. He described his brother as someone who had endured plenty of pain but had never let it harden him. Their talk was cut short when Liz arrived in a panic. Nicholas hurried Siobhan into hiding before opening the door. Liz confessed that she lost Cam and Jake's trust fund in a bad investment. She explained that she made the choice partly in an attempt to sever her ties to Nicholas and in a misguided way to create a path back to Lucky. When Lucky arrived, Liz admitted everything and told him she had once hoped it would help reunite them. Lucky was blunt, telling her that that would never happen. While Liz was upset, she also accepted the truth and left after Lucky reassured her that the boys would be fine with both him and Nicholas looking out for them. And that was because she had invested that money in that pharmaceutical stuff.
Yep.
Once Liz was gone, Siobhan emerged from hiding and admitted that she had overheard the conversation. She wanted to know if Liz was Lucky's ex-wife, and he confirmed it, trying to make sense of how much Siobhan had picked up. They shared a candid moment about her confusing connection, acknowledging that it wasn't just about dodging bullets together, but something more complicated neither could quite define. Lucky told her about his meeting with Jason and the plan to trap the Balkan, which prompted a sarcastic remark from Siobhan about how everything could go back to normal afterwards. Brenda to Rome, her to Ireland, and Lucky to his ex-wife. Meanwhile, Jason filled Sunny in on the scheme. While Sunny didn't like the idea of using Brenda as bait, Jason reassured him that they'd keep her safe. Later, Sam heard about the plan and suggested she dress as Brenda and act as the decoy. Jason admitted the plan was Lucky's, but agreed Sam's idea could work. At Windermere, Lucky tried to make Siobhan more comfortable, joking about the gargoyles that made the place feel eerie. She teased that she'd have fond memories of him when she returned home, but Lucky told her it was far too soon to be talking about leaving. He wanted to finish the mission first so that they could figure out what came next. Siobhan bristled, reminding him that she could handle herself. Lucky was curious why she seemed so intent on putting distance between them, but before she could answer, Lulu called. She explained that she needed him to play along with Luke's latest scam, a fake illness meant to win Tracy back. Lucky agreed to visit their father, unaware that Swarvak was nearby, eavesdropping on every word. Back at the castle, Siobhan pressed Lucky to explain his family further and was surprised to realize that she had already met Luke when he was disguised as the priest in Ireland. She asked if he was trying to win back Lucky's mother, but Lucky clarified that his parents were divorced and the woman Luke loved was Tracy. Siobhan joked that if Lucky ever collapsed, she'd know better than to take it seriously. They both laughed, though Lucky admitted that he may have shared a little too much. Shifting back to the mission, Lucky said he trusted Jason even though they were on opposite sides of the law, but he refused to let Siobhan come with him in meeting with the Balkan. She worried that the Balkan was always a step ahead and Lucky might walk into an ambush. Her fears were well-founded. Swarvak had already told the Balkan that Ronan O'Reilly was really Lucky Spencer. I forgot that Lucky and Jason had been, getting along for so long. I know we talked about it with them, hanging over the bridge and all that stuff, but
Right.
why are they still on different sides of the law? They really have helped each other out many, many times.
I don't know.
Nicholas voiced his own concern, urging Lucky to bring in Interpol, but Lucky was determined to see the mission through. Before leaving, he told Siobhan that if something happened to him, he wanted to know that she was safe. She kissed him and told him to make sure that he came back. After he left, Nicholas reassured her that Lucky was the most capable man he'd ever known, though he admitted it was hard not to worry. At the same time, Jason, Sam, and Dante prepared their part of the operation. Sam was dressed as Brenda, went over the details with them, ready to act as bait. Dante worried the plan might expose them, while Jason stressed that it would only work if Brenda didn't interfere. That turned out to be wishful thinking because Brenda herself arrived and flatly announced that the plan would fail, insisting she should be the one to be kidnapped by Lucky. She clashed with Jason, who immediately shot down the idea. After he left, Brenda told Dante that since they were the only two who knew the real reason the Balkan was after her, her connection to Alexander's death, they had to find their own way to derail Lucky's plan. As Jason and Lucky closed in on their high-stakes setup and Siobhan worried over what could happen, the danger tightened around them, with the Balkan already one step closer to knowing the truth about Lucky's double life.
Sam disguised herself as Brenda, and Lucky, staying in character as Ronan O'Reilly, staged a kidnapping to sell the illusion. For a while, everything went according to plan. Lucky played the part of the ruthless mercenary, rough with Brenda, as he delivered her to the warehouse rendezvous point. Jason and Dante kept watch, ready to back him up at the moment the Balkan's people made a move. But Spinelli, eager to help, accidentally revealed the location to the real Brenda. True to form, Brenda refused to stay on the sidelines and rushed into the middle of the trap. The situation quickly unraveled. Brenda stumbled right into the chaos, which left Lucky scrambling to keep his cover intact. When one of the Balkan's men pulled a gun on Dante, Brenda shocked everyone by grabbing the weapon and firing the fatal shot herself. The action saved Dante's life, but it set off a chain of consequences Lucky couldn't stop. Not only did it add another layer of secrecy to Brenda's history, but it also jeopardized the fragile balance of his mission. Lucky's role as Ronin was never meant to withstand so much public exposure, and Brenda's interference threatened to pull everything down around them. As Lucky tried to regroup, another crisis hit much closer to home. Siobhan, who had been under Nicholas's protection at Windermere, vanished. At first, Lucky hoped she had simply wandered the grounds, but when a frantic search of Spoon Island turned up nothing, the truth sank in. Siobhan hadn't left on her own. She had been taken. The Balkan had gotten to her, and the secret Lucky thought he'd buried was now out in the open. The grim confirmation came when Dante showed him a photo of Siobhan bound to a chair, bruised but alive. The caption was chillingly simple. The Balkan knew Ronan O'Reilly was really Lucky Spencer. Interpol's response only deepened the blow. Instead of backing him, Agent Bates coldly informed Lucky that he was cut off. Interpol considered the operation compromised, and they weren't willing to risk further resources on a man who had let his emotions get entangled. Furious but undeterred, Lucky declared that he would handle the rescue himself. He had already bent the rules for Siobhan, staging her death to throw off suspicion, and now that gamble had backfired. The weight of the responsibility sat heavily on him. She had been dragged into his mission, and her life was in danger because of it. Jason and Dante tried to keep focus on the larger picture. The Balkans' demand was straightforward: trade Brenda for Siobhan. To Jason, there was no way they could risk Brenda, especially given how much Sonny had at stake. Dante reminded Lucky that he couldn't afford to think like a grieving boyfriend. He needed to act like a cop. But Lucky, in his emotions raw, admitted it wasn't just the assignment anymore. Somewhere along the way, Siobhan had become more than a partner or a witness. She had become someone that mattered to him deeply. That truth cut through his professional detachment and left him fighting with both Jason and Dante over the right call. Every move forward carried danger. Plans were laid out for a confrontation with the Balkans men, but Lucky's desperation made it clear he wasn't only thinking about strategy, he was thinking about Siobhan tied to the chair, waiting for him to save her. What had started as an elaborate undercover assignment had turned into something far more personal. The mission to take down the Balkan was simple, but for Lucky, everything narrowed down to one goal: bringing Siobhan back alive, no matter the cost. Lucky's undercover work with Interpol pushed him into an even more dangerous situation when Marco, one of the Balkans' henchmen, called with threats against Siobhan. Lucky demanded to hear her voice, but Marco refused, taunting him instead. His anger boiled over until Jason stepped in, reminding Lucky that losing his temper could get someone killed. Steadying himself, Lucky refused to walk into a trap and negotiated for the meeting to take place at the Bluffs. Jason and Dante agreed to back him up, while Brenda reluctantly became part of the plan, playing the role of bait to draw Marco out. The rescue unfolded with high tension. Jason and Dante took hidden sniper positions while Lucky stood in the open with Brenda, holding her tightly as if she were a captive. Brenda sold the act, pretending to struggle against him until Marco appeared with Siobhan, who was still bound and under guard. Marco taunted Brenda about the Balkans' knowledge, and when Brenda charged at him in a flash of emotion, the motion drew everything off balance. Jason warned Dante to wait, but Dante fired anyway, killing Marco and igniting a firefight. Amid the chaos, Lucky rushed to Siobhan's side, shielding her until the shooting ended. When it was over, the Balkans' men lay dead, but Lucky was unsettled. Something about Brenda's reaction didn't add up, and Marco's words lingered in his mind. Jason escorted Brenda and Siobhan back to the penthouse to regroup. There, Siobhan shared details of her captivity. The men had strict instructions to keep Brenda alive, and she had overheard the name Alexander more than once. Jason pressed Brenda about it, but she avoided answering, leaving Jason and Lucky uneasy. Afterward, Siobhan tried to shake off the ordeal with a drink, but when Lucky joined her, their conversation turned heartfelt. He admitted that his drinking had only been part of his cover as Ronan O'Reilly, and he promised to protect her. Siobhan gently pushed back, saying she didn't need pity, but Lucky told her that she had been an incredible adventure in his life, and the moment turned tender, drawing them closer. Their growing connection faced a test soon after when Lucky discovered her packing, ready to return home to Ireland. Siobhan argued that she didn't want to be a burden and that eventually they'd have to part ways anyway, since her life was across the ocean. Lucky admitted he would miss her too much and worry about her safety, while the Balkan was still a threat. After some hesitation, Siobhan agreed to stay, but on her own terms. She would find work and her own place rather than depend on him. Not long after, Nicholas stopped by, relieved to see her safe. Siobhan thanked him for his concern, but made sure Nicholas understood she didn't intend to be reliant on Lucky. Watching all of this unfold, it was clear that what had started as part of Lucky's assignment had shifted into something real, a relationship that carried its own weight outside of his undercover role. Lucky tried to convince himself and everyone else that his feelings for Siobhan were purely professional, insisting that he was keeping her close only to protect her. When Nicholas pressed him, Lucky half joked that her beauty and quick wit had nothing to do with it, but it was clear to both brothers that the situation wasn't quite so simple. Their conversations shifted when Nicholas shared that he had called their mother to let her know that the Scorpio home had burned down. Lucky worried that Laura would be crushed by the loss, but Nicholas reassured him that she was handling it well thanks to the care she was receiving in Paris. Still, she had asked for photographs of the house, and Lucky knew exactly which old family album Laura wanted. He promised to send it to her. Before leaving, Nicholas circled back to Siobhan. He admitted that she and Lucky seemed to connect, but he also warned that it might feel like a wartime romance, something born from chaos and pressure. Nicholas went further, suggesting that Lucky might have attached himself to Siobhan because she wasn't tied to the painful history between him, Liz, and Nicholas. He moved on.
Right. What did you want him to
do? When you find someone outside of Port Charles or outside of the same family, what Nicholas is like, come on, you got to find somebody else that I've already slept with. That's the only way that this is not, I can't even think of the word that I'm looking for right now. Lucky bristled at the implication that he was just filling a void, especially when Nicholas admitted he had made his own share of rebound mistakes with Nadine, Rebecca, and possibly Liz. Lucky made it clear that Siobhan wasn't a placeholder, she was someone special, and he wasn't about to let Nicholas's doubts change his mind. Meanwhile, Siobhan was settling into life in Port Charles in her own way. She walked into Jake's looking for work, and Coleman wasted no time in hiring once she flashed her bartending experience and charm. She laid down her boundaries quickly. She worked hard, earned her tips, but she wasn't there to be anyone's fling. It wasn't long before Maxie came in and struck up a conversation. Maxie was sharp enough to pick up on Siobhan's Irish background. The accent gave it away.
Mm-hmm.
And she was floored when Siobhan casually mentioned that she was in town because of her boyfriend, Lucky Spencer. Maxie wasted no time rushing to Lucky, telling him that some Irish bimbo at Jake's was claiming him as her boyfriend. Lucky was secretly pleased that Siobhan had referred to him that way, but Maxie wasn't buying his calm reaction. She accused him of moving on far too quickly and reminded him of their kiss, making it clear she hadn't expected to be so easily replaced. Lucky didn't see it that way at all, but the exchange left him unsettled. When he later showed up at Jake's, he teased Siobhan about her disappearing act earlier that morning. Their banter showed just how comfortable they were with becoming with each other, even if neither wanted to admit how much the connection mattered. At the bar, Siobhan deflected Coleman's attempts to flirt with her, showing that she could handle herself without trouble. Lulu stopped by and chatted with her, and not long after, Dante joined them. Their conversation revealed Lulu's fears about losing her independence in her relationship, echoing some of the same struggles that shaped her parents' history. Meanwhile, Jason appeared to follow up with Siobhan about her captivity at the hands of the Balkan's men. He pressed her for details, and though she didn't recall much, she did mention overhearing a name, Jack. Lucky walked in on their conversation and immediately bristled at Jason's questioning, worried for Siobhan's safety. Even in quieter moments, the bond between Lucky and Siobhan grew stronger. She teased that perhaps she could be the one protecting him, since he had already made himself a target by crossing the Balkan. Lucky didn't disagree, but he admitted he'd gladly put himself in danger if it meant keeping her safe.
Aww. Lucky and Siobhan's connection continued to grow in both quiet and meaningful ways, blending flirtation with moments of genuine understanding. With moments of genuine understanding. Siobhan confessed that she would miss him if anything ever happened, and Lucky acknowledged that she could see sides of him that most people never noticed. That evening at Jake's, Siobhan selected a song at the jukebox, and the two shared a slow dance that highlighted their natural chemistry. Leaving the bar hand in hand, Lucky paused in the alley to brush a strand of hair from her face before leaning in for a gentle kiss. The following morning, Lucky woke Siobhan with affectionate kisses, only to find her rushing off for errands. Playfully, Lucky teased that he might stake out the airport to make sure she wasn't secretly heading back to Ireland, and Siobhan reassured him that she had no such plans, showing the growing trust and comfort between them. Amid the budding romance, Lucky worked to maintain his role as a father. Aww. He met Liz at the park while she took Aiden for a checkup, spending time with Cameron and Jake and enjoying the simple joy of parenting. He complimented Liz on her parenting skills, noticing Aiden's growth and even commenting on the familiar trait of long fingers, a trait he recognized from Laura and Nicholas. Shortly after, Siobhan arrived and Lucky introduced her to his sons. The brief exchange between Siobhan and Liz was polite, but highlighted the complexities of Lucky's life, balancing his responsibilities as a father, the trust of his children's mother, and the excitement of a new relationship. However, tension arose as Siobhan questioned Lucky about his priorities and intentions. At Jake's, she accused him of running from his responsibilities to his children when he assumed Ronan O'Reilly's identity. She made it clear that she wasn't impressed in being with someone who wasn't fully present, even as Lucky tried to explain that his involvement with Liz was strictly for the boys. Siobhan's skepticism grew when she accused Lucky of lying about everything, including his true identity, and questioned why she should trust him. Lucky insisted that his fascination with her had been genuine from the start, emphasizing that his feelings weren't a fleeting attraction, but something deeper, even amidst the complexities of his life. Wasn't it just like a few days ago that she told him she wasn't looking to marry him, she just wanted to hook up? So why
Yep.
is she freaking
Yep.
out already? The situation became even more layered when Liz arrived at Jake's to meet Siobhan. Lucky stepped aside to speak privately with Liz, leaving Siobhan nearby, ostensibly working but clearly listening in. Liz admitted that she was surprised Lucky had introduced someone that he had met during undercover work to his family life so quickly. Siobhan took the opportunity to share her background, explaining her experience working in bars across Europe and her history of dating the wrong men, including a former boyfriend who had been killed by Ronan O'Reilly, the identity Lucky had assumed. This conversation revealed the delicate balancing act Lucky faced, juggling his undercover work, fatherhood, and a deepening connection with Siobhan, all while navigating Liz's reasonable concerns and Siobhan's growing desire for independence. Liz acknowledged Siobhan's appeal. She was beautiful, mysterious, and clearly capable of captivating Lucky's attention, but her mysterious past meant that there was little anyone could know about her true character. Lucky reassured Liz that he knew enough to feel confident in his choices and emphasized that respecting boundaries was crucial. After Liz left, Siobhan expressed frustration at what she perceived as Liz interfering. Lucky explained that Liz was simply accustomed to being part of his life and reassured Siobhan that what mattered most was his own feelings. Unafraid, Siobhan accepted Lucky's playful dare to prove herself, signaling her willingness to step into his complicated world without fear. Lucky's interaction with his family and the Quartermains highlighted the intricate dynamics he was juggling. He met Luke at the Metro Court, where Luke revealed that Tracy had agreed to a wedding on Laura's birthday. Lucky reacted with frustration, recognizing the emotional tension surrounding the date. Luke offered his philosophical musings on love, likening it to a drug. A little could bring happiness, too much could be damaging. Lulu later interpreted Luke's message, suggesting it was too early to read too much into Lucky and Siobhan's growing relationship, and Luke agreed, reinforcing that sometimes timing and perspective matter more than advice. During Thanksgiving, Lucky invited Siobhan to dinner in New York, explaining that his children would be with Audrey and Liz at family celebrations. Siobhan was curious about why Lucky didn't spend the holidays with his extended family and was fascinated by the dysfunctional dynamics he described, which only heightened her interest in spending time with him. At the Quartermain home, Siobhan charmed Edward with stories of meeting Lucky and navigating the family's quirky traditions, like ordering pizza instead of turkey, proving her ability to adapt quickly to unfamiliar social situations. Their partnership extended beyond personal interactions into the ongoing investigation. At Kelly's, Lucky and Siobhan shared quiet moments over breakfast where Lucky encouraged her to recall any details from her captivity by the Balkan's men. Siobhan admitted that she had focused on freeing herself rather than eavesdropping, but expressed a desire to contribute however she could, though all she had to offer was the cryptic name Jack. Lucky balanced his growing feelings for Siobhan with the need to remain focused on his Interpol duties. Working with Sam, Jason, and Dante at McCall and Jackal Private Investigations, Lucky reviewed phone records and attempted to trace any leads related to the Balkan. They explored connections to the Balkan's son, Alexander Janersek, and considered that Jack might actually be a last name, which led them to suspect Jerry Jacks. Lucky weighed Jerry's history of crimes in Port Charles against the possibility that he could be involved with the Balkan, knowing the stakes were high and that anyone connected to the investigation could be in danger. Siobhan continued to support Lucky, often bringing takeout and offering insight from her own experience as a captive. Their teamwork and growing bond were interrupted when Agent Bates arrived at the office with a startling request. Lucky would need to resume his undercover identity as Ronan O'Reilly. Siobhan reacted with outrage, fearing the Balkan would immediately recognize Lucky and that the assignment would place him directly in harm's way. Despite her protest, it was clear that Lucky's responsibility with Interpol and the ongoing Balkan investigation would not pause for romance or comfort. The situation forced both Lucky and Siobhan to navigate the delicate balance between personal attachment, trust, and professional obligation, challenged them to maintain their connection while facing the constant threat of danger.
Lucky remained adamant about keeping Siobhan out of harm's way, warning Agent Bates to leave her alone while pressing for all the specifics of the assignment. Bates explained that Ronan O'Reilly had left a safe deposit box under a false name, and Lucky's mission was to retrieve it in New York City and contact Interpol once it was secure. I thought that they bailed on him.
I thought so too.
Okay.
Because the Balkan already knows that he's Lucky. I feel like Interpol would have been part of that, like knowing that.
Right. He was also cautioned against confronting the Balkan on his own. Lucky agreed to take on the task, but Siobhan immediately insisted on accompanying him, arguing that he might need a partner to create a diversion since the Balkan's men could be lying in wait. Lucky refused, insisting he couldn't focus if he had to worry about her safety, and told her firmly to stay in Port Charles. Undeterred, Siobhan secretly booked a flight to New York, determined to help protect him despite his warnings. When she appeared at Lucky's Manhattan hotel, he demanded to know how she managed to track him down. Siobhan explained that she had confronted Agent Bates until he revealed Lucky's location and then convinced the hotel maid to let her slip into his room unnoticed. Lucky appreciated her resourcefulness, but remained insistent that she should return home. The two of them argued over the plan to retrieve the safety deposit box, but Siobhan pointing out that a diversion was essential to prevent the Balkan's men from ambushing Lucky as he exited the bank. After some debate, Lucky agreed to her idea of using room service attendant as a decoy. This plan would give them the window needed to secure the box while minimizing Siobhan's exposure to danger. Their collaboration carried both tension and intimacy. Lucky and Siobhan shared a passionate moment before she briefly left to meet her contact, a man with a heavy Russian accent who would follow the decoy and ensure the plan succeeded. When she returned, she brought Dutch apple cookies, evoking memories of her time in Amsterdam, which made Lucky smile and reminded them both of how far they had come since first meeting in the Irish pub. Their connection had grown from trust and attraction into a partnership that was both strategic and deeply personal. Siobhan kept herself on edge, pacing and nervously chewing on her nails while coordinating with her contact. When he called from outside the bank to confirm his position, she assured him that they would arrive shortly, but had to conceal the call from Lucky, pretending it was a heated argument with her sister Fiona. Lucky observed her distraction, but unaware of the specifics, admitted he didn't realize how much pressure she had faced from her family. Siobhan claimed that her sister Fiona was just bitter from marrying the wrong man, then shifted the conversation back to their plan for retrieving the contents of Ronan O'Reilly's safety deposit box. Lucky again tried to convince her to stay out of the operation, but Siobhan was determined to be involved. When their decoy arrived, they dressed her to resemble Siobhan and went over the details of the plan, giving her part of the payment up front, promising the rest once the job was done. You have to really hope you get the right service.
Right.
And I feel like that's a little weird. Hey, can you send up the redhead?
It's a Sunweb holiday.
Hi there, we're Sunweb and we love ski holidays. That feeling of cruising down beautiful slopes. It's a feeling we want to share. We want you to get the most out of your ski holiday. That's why with Sunweb, your lift pass is always included, which saves you serious money. That's money for a round of drinks at the Après, treating yourself at the spa, or maybe to just put in your piggy bank. Discover how much you can save at sunweb.co.uk.
With our food, so that we can try to talk her into doing this for us?
Right.
Everything unfolded according to Siobhan's strategy. The Balkan's men took the envelope from the decoy, and she and Lucky returned safely to the hotel. The decoy later collected her final payment and confirmed that the handoff went smoothly, leaving Siobhan feeling triumphant, while Lucky remained uneasy over how easily it had gone. Opening the envelope and revealed surveillance photos of Brenda with both Alexander and Dante, which made Lucky realize that Brenda might have a connection to Alexander's death. He explained to Siobhan that Brenda had briefly dated Alexander, the Balkan's son, but ended the relationship after learning of his criminal ties. When Alexander tried to abduct her in New York, she shot him, and the Balkan never knew his son was dead until the body washed ashore in New Jersey. Afterward, Siobhan kissed Lucky, and they made love, because that is such a turn-on. Later, she called one of the Balkan's men to let him know that the police were planning to use Alexander's remains to lure the Balkan out. Meanwhile, Dante informed Jason that the photo of him guarding Brenda had been discovered in the safety deposit box, leaving him distracted. On the Haunted Star, Luke enlisted Ethan's help in a high-stakes card game to help raise money for his wedding to Tracy. Lucky and Siobhan arrived, and Luke asked Lucky for assistance. Tracy arrived, questioning why the Haunted Star was closed, and made it clear Luke needed to prove his love. Brooklyn and Nicholas also came aboard to discuss the wedding. Siobhan tried to persuade Nicholas to convince Lucky to quit the Balkan case, but Nicholas pointed out that Lucky was unlikely to back down because he believed Siobhan was in danger. Lucky spoke privately with Luke, insisting he wouldn't interfere with the wedding, but warning Luke to consider the consequences of losing Tracy. Siobhan attempted to reach Lucky by phone when he left the casino without a word, expressing her frustration and concern for his safety. Nicholas noticed her feelings ran deeper than she admitted, but reminded her that she couldn't stop Lucky from taking risks he deemed necessary. Meanwhile, Jerry moved on to more violent actions, shooting a morgue attendant and fleeing in a van while Jason, Dante, and Lucky coordinated a pursuit. The van eventually crashed in a ravine, and while Dante believed Jerry couldn't have survived, Lucky reminded him that they weren't certain that he had been the Balkan. Back in Port Charles, Siobhan received a cryptic text directing her to Pier 52 for Balkan-related details. Lucky returned, wrapping his arms around her, and she played off her nervousness while talking about Fiona. She suggested exploring Port Charles with Lucky, but he explained he couldn't because Jerry was still alive and on the loose. Siobhan argued that Brenda had enough protection and didn't need Lucky risking himself, but Lucky insisted he couldn't walk away and wanted Siobhan to accept that, no matter how much she worried. She continued to plead with him to reconsider, but he remained steadfast in his commitment to the case and to keeping Brenda safe. Siobhan reminded Lucky that she had recently stopped grieving for someone she cared about, so she wasn't interested in reliving that pain. Lucky insisted he could handle himself, but Siobhan argued that he wasn't bulletproof. Their argument ended when Dante arrived with files on Jerry and the Balkan. Siobhan decided to make herself scarce so Lucky and Dante could work, though she lingered nearby to eavesdrop. Lucky asked about Jason, and Dante explained he and Brenda were at the penthouse and tried to lure Jerry out. Dante suggested using Alexander's body to draw him out, but Lucky didn't think it would work a second time, and Dante was hesitant to put Brenda in more danger. They discussed where Jerry might hide, with Lucky ruling out Jax's home. When Dante wondered if the contents of Ronan's safety deposit box could help, Lucky admitted they had already gone over it extensively with Siobhan. Dante questioned why Lucky had involved her, worried it might endanger her further. Lucky explained he had already been in his New York hotel room, and he credited her with helping secure the safety deposit box and evade the Balkan's men. He also suggested that they question Brenda directly, believing she knew more than she had admitted, while Dante remained protective of her. On Pier 52, Siobhan waited for her contact when Jerry appeared, greeting her and noting the risks of meeting face to face. Siobhan warned him it was foolish, and Jerry acknowledged the race stakes, but insisted Lucky had become a nuisance and needed to be dealt with. At the waterfront, Jerry ordered Siobhan to kill Lucky, warning her that falling for him was a fatal mistake. Back at Lucky's apartment, he confronted Dante about needing an objective perspective to question Brenda, noting Dante's clear partiality. Dante admitted that he and Brenda were involved in a wrongful death lawsuit and worried that she might crack under pressure. Later, Siobhan brought groceries to Lucky and promised a home-cooked meal, but Jerry called her with instructions to meet him at the pier with Lucky. She excused herself to run errands, and soon Lulu arrived with a gift, prompting Lucky to share his hopes for her and Dante's relationship. After Lulu left, Fiona called, revealing that she and Siobhan hadn't spoken for at least a month, which made Lucky question who Siobhan had actually been talking to. Luke stopped by, and Lucky confided that Siobhan had been lying for weeks. Dante later visited Sunny to gather more information on Brenda, which Luke questioned, but Sunny allowed Dante to speak freely. Dante suggested that Jerry Jax might actually be the Balkan. At the waterfront, Jerry grew frustrated that Siobhan hadn't brought Lucky and was interrupted by a call from Theo, revealing that the man Siobhan thought was the Balkan wasn't actually him. The real Balkan had never been seen by Jerry, and he hinted that it was time for Siobhan to understand who the Balkan really was and what he wanted.
Lucky called Luke to his apartment after discovering that Siobhan hadn't been truthful about a phone call from her sister. Luke offered several explanations for why she might have lied, including an ex-boyfriend she didn't want to mention. Lucky accepted the possibility, but admitted that he still felt uneasy, especially after his recent experiences with Liz. Luke advised him to relax and trust the flow of things, reminding Lucky that Siobhan had a life before him and that he had already proven he could navigate complicated situations, as he had in Ireland. Their conversation was lighthearted, ending with laughter as they left to join Tracy on the Haunted Star. On the boat, Maya, Ethan, and Tracy were waiting. Tracy was worried, questioning whether Luke would actually show up for the wedding. Luke teased her while Lucky tried to smooth over any delays, but Tracy remained skeptical. Meanwhile, on the docks, Jerry threatened Siobhan for not delivering Lucky, but he was interrupted by a call from the Balkan, Theo, who warned Jerry not to harm Siobhan or Lucky. The Balkan criticized Jerry for mismanaging his role, ultimately cutting ties with him and leaving Jerry shot and falling into the water. Siobhan immediately called Lucky to tell him what had happened, prompting him to rush to the docks. She described the shooting and identified Jerry as the man she had seen fall into the water. Lucky called the harbor patrol, though the strong current made recovery unlikely. Back at Lucky's apartment, Luke vented about Ethan's changing loyalty, recalling past times when Ethan had been more aligned with him. Lucky and Ethan stayed determined to keep their father sober for the wedding, sharing laughs over family dynamics. As the wedding preparations continued, Luke, Lucky, and Ethan navigated the challenge of getting him to the altar. Edward offered to drive Luke to the mansion, and Lucky was relieved to see him safely arrive. At the foyer, Lucky and Ethan welcomed guests and noticed Alice's concern that Tracy might cause trouble. Jax checked in with Lucky about Jerry, hoping he might still be alive, and Lucky understood his feelings. Brooklyn and Nicholas arrived, and Lucky reassured Nicholas that he was comfortable with their presence. As the ceremony unfolded, Lucky kept an eye on everyone, including Sunny, Brenda, Carly, and Brooklyn, noting joyful reunions and potential tensions. Siobhan arrived, and Lucky had to leave her side briefly to assist Alexis, Lulu, and Ethan with Luke, who initially refused to sign the prenup agreement. After being persuaded, Luke signed the document and prepared for the ceremony. The guests took their seats, and Luke finally appeared, walking to the altar to join his sons and the minister. The ceremony proceeded with Maya, Lulu, and Tracy making their entrances, followed by Ethan and Lucky's toast celebrating the couple's perseverance and love. Why was Maya one of the bridesmaids?
I don't know.
I don't remember them being that close, but okay.
Maybe she just needed one.
Maybe. After the wedding, Lucky reflected on Luke and Tracy's commitment, realizing he could find love again. Siobhan shared that she enjoyed the ceremony, and Lucky teased her about meeting Nicholas, though she happily declined, content to be with him. Okay, not everyone wants to hook up with your brother, Lucky. Come on. The event highlighted family bonds, celebrations, and the light-hearted moments that came even amid the tension of Lucky's Interpol pursuits. Theo went to the police station to request all of Lucky's files on the Balkan, explaining that he needed them to properly defend Brenda against the wrongful death lawsuit filed by Anton Balkovic's family. Lucky reminded him that Dante was already overseeing the case, but Theo suggested there might be a presumption of bias since Dante had been involved in the shooting. Lucky explained that Brenda had acted in defense of Dante and that the Balkan had sent multiple assassins after her. He directed Theo to Agent Bates for additional insight and provided the agent's contact information. Theo then questioned Lucky about Ronan O'Reilly, a known contract killer. Lucky feigned ignorance while Theo explained that proving Rowan had been sent after Brenda could strengthen her defense by showing that Anton intended to harm her. Lucky agreed to forward a copy of the case file and have Dante contact Theo. Later, Theo encountered Alexis on the sidewalk and invited her to lunch to ease her concerns. Meanwhile, Lucky updated Jason on Theo's visit, emphasizing the potential trouble for Brenda and Dante. Jason expressed concern that Brenda might confess to Alexander's death if forced to testify, given the eerie similarities between Anton's shooting and Alexander's. He also raised suspicion about the timing of the lawsuit and Jerry's sudden appearance, suggesting a possible connection between Jerry and the lawsuit or between Jerry and Siobhan, since they had provided Jerry's name. Lucky and Jason discussed Siobhan's eyewitness account of Jerry being shot on the piers and plunging into the water. While Jason questioned the coincidence and the fact that Jerry's body hadn't been recovered, Lucky noted that bodies weren't always found in the water, though he admitted he couldn't ignore the timing. Jason remained suspicious that Jerry might still be alive and planning another move against Brenda, adding tension to Lucky's work with Interpol. In January 2011, Luke approached Lucky at the Port Charles police station, asking for help locating an old friend in Prague during his and Tracy's honeymoon. Lucky suspected Luke had a risky plan in mind, and Luke admitted he was after 3 diamonds called the Three Sisters. Lucky warned him that it was a bad idea to attempt a heist during a honeymoon, especially with Tracy involved. Tracy arrived just in time to hear the last of Luke's plan, and Luke asked Lucky to watch over Lulu while they were away. Lucky agreed and gave them a few pointed tips before they left for the airport, wishing them a safe trip. Afterwards, Siobhan invited Lucky to dinner, and they shared a lighthearted moment, joking about Luke's diamond heist. Their plans were interrupted by a call about a crash, which forced Lucky to cancel dinner. He requested the passenger list for the bus involved and was alarmed to see Cameron's name. Lucky updated Liz, who felt guilty for letting Cameron go on the trip, but Lucky reassured her it wasn't her fault. He coordinated with rescue teams and offered for Siobhan to leave, though she insisted on staying to help. Mac arrived at the squad room, anxious because Maxie had been on the bus and needed updates. At the hospital, Liz overheard Lisa calling a nurse to cover an extra shift and apologized, worried about Cameron. Lucky and Siobhan arrived, and they monitored the situation as the remaining passengers arrived safely. Cameron eventually came through with Maxie and Matt unharmed. Lucky was relieved and allowed Siobhan to stay with Cameron, reading him a story while Liz went to pick up Jake for a short visit. Once Cameron was settled and asleep, Siobhan praised Lucky's parenting skills. Lucky reflected on how raising Cameron had given him a better understanding of his own father and the challenges of being a parent, noting that Luke always made the effort to return home. Siobhan expressed admiration for Lucky's dedication to his sons and the way he balanced responsibility with affection.
Aww. Liz returned to the hospital with Jake, and Jason couldn't take his eyes off the boy as he checked in on Cam. Liz reassured both Jason and Sam that Cam was doing well, and then noticed Jason watching Jake closely. Curious, she asked Jake if he remembered Jason and Sam, and Jake smiled sweetly, which left Jason looking a little deflated once Liz walked away. Later, Cam asked if Jake could spend the night at the hospital. Aww.
They were such good brothers.
Cam accepted it happily, and after Liz explained that Cam needed to rest, but promised he'd still get a cookie as a compromise. Cam happily accepted, and after Liz and Jake left, he asked Lucky to sing a song, a small moment that highlighted the closeness he shared with the father and the comfort that Lucky brought. I love him. Okay. Lucky later met up with Siobhan at Jake's as she started her shift at the bar. He invited her to go out later to hear some Celtic music, but she declined, saying she had other plans and was hesitant to share the details. Lucky, however, revealed that he knew she had been lying about phone calls and she had claimed were from her sister Fiona. Siobhan admitted that she had been afraid telling the truth would drive Lucky away. She asked if they could keep certain secrets private, but Lucky wasn't willing to do that. Siobhan reassured him it was nothing she couldn't handle, explaining that an old boyfriend had been calling and she had been trying to discourage him. She hadn't shared this with Lucky because she didn't want her past life to interfere with their relationship. Lucky accepted her explanation and left, unaware that the Balkan was watching and viewing Siobhan as nothing more than a convenient and disposable tool. Later, Siobhan went to Diane's office and met Theo, not realizing he was the Balkan. She told him that she needed help obtaining a work permit on Lucky's advice. Theo offered to help pro bono, questioning her motives for staying in the country and probing about any past arrests or questionable activities. Lucky arrived, and Siobhan was mortified when Theo suggested a green card marriage between them to resolve her immigration situation. Lucky was caught off guard, but curious why Theo, who was supposed to be representing Brenda and Dante, was involved in her case. Siobhan explained that she had mentioned her work permit troubles when she stopped by Diane's office. Theo assured him,
It's a Sunweb holiday.
Hi there, we're Sunweb and we love ski holidays. That feeling of cruising down beautiful slopes, it's a feeling we want to share. We want you to get the most out of your ski holiday. That's why with Sunweb, your lift pass is always included, which saves you serious money. That's money for a round of drinks at the Après, treating yourself at the spa, or maybe to just put in your piggy bank. Discover how much you can save at sunweb.co.uk.
he was an expert in international law and happy to assist pro bono. Siobhan later pulled Lucky aside to explain that Theo's insensitivity, and he surprised her by admitting it wasn't the worst idea he had ever heard. Siobhan then met Theo again in a church confessional booth, where he disguised his voice while posing as the Balkan. He expressed disappointment in her work performance, while Siobhan explained that Lucky, Jason, and Dante hadn't made much progress in the investigation. She noted that there were doubts about whether Jerry was actually the Balkan and warned that being unexpectedly summoned could raise suspicions. Siobhan stressed that keeping Lucky's trust was essential to obtaining the information. Theo, sensing her emotional attachment to Lucky, warned that failing to maintain that trust could have substantial consequences. Eventually, Siobhan found Lucky waiting for her at Jake's. She worried that he might be upset, but he reassured her and admitted he wished he had known how serious her immigration issues were. Not knowing had made him feel like an outsider in her life. Siobhan insisted there wasn't anything he could have done, but Lucky teased he could always marry her. Jax was sitting in his office when a news report caught his attention. A body had been pulled from the harbor, and the reporter speculated it might be Jerry Jax. Lucky arrived shortly after and confirmed that the body had been recovered, but dental records would be necessary to make a definitive identification. Jax admitted that he had conflicted feelings. He would mourn the brother he had once known, but not the person Jerry had become over the years. Lucky reminded him that even if it was Jerry, there was no concrete proof linking him to the Balkan, and the investigation was far from over. Meanwhile, Jason went to Lucky's apartment to question Siobhan about her knowledge of Jerry's connection to the Balkan. Siobhan tried to keep things brief, reminding Jason that she had already shared her account with Lucky. Jason, however, wanted the story firsthand. Siobhan explained that she had heard a man shouting on the piers and arrived just in time to see Jerry staggering backward from a gunshot. She assumed a silencer had been used, as she hadn't heard the shot, and she didn't realize the man was Jerry until Lucky showed her a photo. Feeling the pressure of Jason's relentless questions, she eventually agreed to report back to the Balkan immediately after he left. Meanwhile, Lucky was juggling multiple angles on the Balkan investigation. At Diane's office, he worked with Spinelli and Diane to piece together information about Jerry and the Balkan. Lucky believed that Alexander might be the key to confirming the Balkan's identity, while Diane suggested his primary concern might actually be protecting Siobhan rather than Brenda. Later, when Lucky returned to his apartment, he found Siobhan visibly shaken after Jason's interrogation. He reassured her, emphasizing that her safety was his top priority. Lucky revealed that the harbor body wasn't Jerry, leaving her still in danger, and admitted that he cared about her, though their conversation was abruptly interrupted when her phone rang. At the same time, Liz was busy juggling parenthood and work, with Steve checking in on her. He noted how much Lucky helped with the boys and praised him for being such a wonderful father. Lucky confirmed Lucky was involved with Siobhan, but insisted she could handle things herself. Brooklyn accused Liz of trying to manipulate Nicholas, and Liz playfully denied it, explaining that she had sent Aiden to visit Nicholas because he couldn't manage on his own. While Nicholas returned home, he reassured Liz that he always had time for her and Aiden. Brooklyn, observing the exchange, admitted Liz was tougher and cleverer than she initially thought. At Lucky's apartment, Spinelli stopped by with new information linking Alexander to Jerry through a Swiss bank account. Lucky considered the possibility that Alexander might be Jerry's son, which could provide crucial insight into the Balkan investigation. Siobhan appeared uneasy and seemed to be withholding information, but Lucky didn't press her as Lulu arrived to talk. Lulu questioned Siobhan's behavior and whether she might eventually return to Ireland once the Balkan threat subsided. Lucky explained that Siobhan's future in the U.S. depended on either a green card or the marriage hadn't had never crossed his mind. Siobhan's encounter with the Balkan escalated when he confronted her in a confessional booth. He left a threatening gift, a photo of a young woman tied to a chair, and pressured her to make sure that Lucky attended an upcoming wedding so he could use him in his revenge against Brenda. Siobhan pleaded with him to end the vendetta, but he warned her that she might be called on to lure Lucky into danger, making her increasing role precarious. Meanwhile, Brooklyn came to Lucky's to warn him about Liz's possible manipulation of Nicholas. Nicholas arrived soon after, and he and Lucky discussed the complicated dynamics involving Liz and Brooklyn, recognizing that rekindling old romances could easily go wrong if motives weren't clear. Amid all this tension and intrigue, Lucky tried to deepen his connection with Siobhan, inviting her to a romantic dinner. However, Siobhan reacted strongly, insisting that their relationship was moving too fast and confessing that she didn't feel as strongly for him as he did for her, and she declared that their relationship was over.
Oof.
Yeah. Hi. That was a lot.
That was a lot.
But we're nearing the end.
Yeah.
Well, the most recent, not the end.
Right.
But yeah, so join us on Monday as we recap this week's shows.
Have a good weekend.
And we'll meet you at the pier.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to go to pier54podcast.com to subscribe on your favorite platform. Don't forget to leave us a review.
And you can also follow us on many social media channels. Just search for Pier 54 Podcast. Also, we are not perfect, so if there is something that we missed or messed up, just let us know by emailing us at pier54podcast@gmail.com.